That's me on the top row in my leisure suit from 1974, my family photo. It's just a little proof that I know the period that we're studying this week from a personal perspective. In fact, the 1970s and the 1980s, for me personally, were very formative years in the way that I feel about this country. Growing up in the early 70s, the very first thing I can remember about television news, about politics, about the government and our country, is those images of our troops withdrawing from Vietnam. And I remember the images after we withdrew from Vietnam of South Vietnam falling to the communists. I remember pretty well, and I was very disappointed about it because it preempted my afternoon cartoons, but those news broadcasts about something called Watergate, and they kept showing this big White House and this funny looking man and talking about something that I didn't quite understand at the time. But by the time the 70s were coming to a close and Carter's presidency was going on, I was getting old enough, 6th grade, 7th grade, to start to understand what was going on in the country. And I realized that our country had kind of gone down the tubes in a lot of ways. Internationally, we were kind of a joke. The Iranians sure didn't fear us. The communists weren't worried about us. They were invading Afghanistan. And they didn't care much about anything we could do about it. The most we could muster was threatening not to send our athletes to the Summer Olympics. Economically, things were bad. There was a gas crisis. The economy was in shambles. There were a lot of people that felt like things were going miserably for this country. Carter had been elected because people had lost trust in government. He was a Washington outsider, had never been to Washington as a congressman or a senator, but he didn't quite fix things either. So in 1980, when a former actor by the name of Ronald Reagan ran for president and said he'd be strong against communists and he'd make America strong again, a lot of people were looking for answers, looking for somebody to pull us up, put us back in a position of world dominance, of a position where people would respect us again. And throughout the 1980s, judging from being elected once and then a second time overwhelmingly re-elected, Reagan seemed to be fitting that bill for America. America was standing up to the communists. As we'll see, by the end of the 1980s, communism was finally falling apart in Europe. We're also going to see some other issues going on. The economy is going to seemingly improve, and there's still controversy today about why and how that worked. Republicans claim, yes, Reaganomics was a success. Democrats claim, well, the economy was going to get better anyway, and Reaganomics are a bad idea. And they still debate that today. It's one of the fundamental differences between Democrats and Republicans on how you run an economy. But during the 80s, for the most part, things seem to be improving. You're also going to notice another couple of important things about the 80s. During the 80s, this issue that we're dealing with terrorism is starting to ramp up, become a little bit bigger issue. And of course, one of the big downfalls for Reagan's administration was how we dealt with that, with the Iran-Contra affair, trying to deal with terrorism and deal with the struggle with communism in a way that wasn't quite above board. It was the big scandal of his presidency. You're going to see some social changes. On the one hand, there's a strong moral majority, as they called themselves, a Christian right, a conservative movement looking for stronger moral issues to be promoted by the government, looking to kind of stand up against some of all that change that had happened in the 60s and the 70s, and aligning itself very strongly with the Republican Party. It'll be one of their base voter groups even to this day. You also see some other changes. AIDS starts to become a big issue. We've moved past the issues of women's rights into further issues like debates over same-sex marriage and gay rights. These start to become big moral issues in America. The struggle over the right to life, abortion, these issues, the woman's right to choose, continue from the 70s into the 80s to be a big hot topic in political debate, and even to this day. So you're going to see some of the ways America has come to be what it is in our century, as it was shaped during the 1980s, as we bring it into the Cold War and move into that brave new world of the 1990s and beyond.